It's drilled to left field. Is it high enough? See ya! A walk-off grand slam, and the Yankees win.
And he drives one to right field over toward the line. Long run for Laureano, and he home runs it, and the Mets win the ball game.
Episode 43 of The Burrows, a special one today. Kevin Bunk, Michael Marlowe coming to you every week, talking baseball multiple times a week. You can check out episode 42, which was live on Monday morning, talking about the weekend in baseball. We'll have another one later in the week. But we are discussing the worst contracts in Major League Baseball today, and we're doing it in a draft format. So the way it works is Mike gets the first pick, I get the second pick, Mike gets the third pick, no back-to-back. We're going to get 6 picks each, and at the end, we'll do some honorable mentions, and we will discuss who we think got the better collection of 6 contracts. We'll talk about each contract as well as we pick them, and we will post it on Instagram for you guys to vote, or you can just leave a comment here on YouTube to vote for who gets the first pick in next week's draft, which means who is the winner of today's. Next week, we're doing 25 and under players. So, Mike, the floor is yours with the first pick of the worst contracts in Major League Baseball draft.
It's funny. We're doing a draft to be the worst. We are to be the best to be the worst. And the worst right now in Major League Baseball has to be Stephen Strasburg, the 7-year, $245 million contract. He pitched under 40 innings, okay, after getting that deal. He wins World Series MVP. They really didn't have a choice, right? They just win the World Series. Again, he's the MVP of that series. He was huge coming out of the bullpen, making big starts. They had to give him a deal, but it ends up being, he had injury history. We knew about the injury history prior to this, but they were forced. And by the way, they wouldn't have gotten away with this, right? Because if they decided they weren't going to pay Strasburg, they were probably going to pay another guy who's going to be on this list, and it didn't end up well for that team. So Strasburg, for me, has to be the first one because he hasn't pitched.
Yeah, I'll take the next ex-national with my pick, and we could discuss this terrible 5 years from Nationals World Series champs. But Anthony Rendon is the holy grail of bad position player contracts. His only moment over his 7-year, $245 million contract was that lefty home run he hit off that position player with the Angels. He has been terrible. It's amazing that both of these guys are the first 2 picks. Imagine telling a Nats fan or a baseball fan after the 2019 season that these would be the 2 worst contracts in baseball in 2025. But they still have another 2 years of this, the Angels. $38 million this season. And the Angels have some bad money sitting around all over their roster, actually, and all over the league with guys that they have to pay still. And Rendon, 35 years old right now, just a terrible, terrible, terrible contract, terrible player. He doesn't even care to be there, Mike.
Rendon isn't even a good person, right? Like he doesn't like baseball, according to people. He said he doesn't like baseball. He got into fights with fans in the stands in Oakland a couple of years back. So this is just a miserable human being that doesn't like baseball and is overpaid to an extreme amount. It's insane.
And we spoke about it a little bit before the show, but one of the things that you take away while you're making these lists is at the time of the contract, Rendon was a top 3 MVP finisher. Strasburg just won World Series MVP, and he's a first overall pick for your franchise. And if you think Paul Skeens has hype, Strasburg was even bigger coming out of college, making his debut, his rookie year, everything for Strasburg. Great player. Unfortunately, I think the opposite of Rendon. He wished he could have been better, but the injury and his health never allowed for that. But yeah, this is 2 bad contracts, and Washington had to give one of them at least.
Yeah, and I don't know which one. I think this one's a little quieter, right? You don't hear about it, so I guess if they had to pick one of these, I think they'd probably rather the Strasburg one. No?
Yeah, I think so. And Strasburg, the difference too is that makes him the worst contract, I think, is obviously the limited appearances. But the fact that if he was good, it could actually help their team. If he was healthy, it could actually help their team. Rendon, I don't know how much he would have helped the Angels anyways, because they had great offense with Ohtani and Trout and that group for 2-3 years, and they just can't pitch anyways. So I don't know how much Rendon helps. Strasburg could have actually helped this team after 2019.
Yep, 100%. And then they ended up selling in that 21 season anyway. All right, so I'm up with the third pick, correct?
Yep.
I could go in a lot of different directions here. And I don't know which one to go with. I'm going to take this one, might be a little shocking to you. I'm going to take XANDER BOAGARTS, 11 years,
Wow.
$280 million. Okay. And we're going to see a similar deal, I think, later, whether you take it now or I take it later. But giving out a 11-year contract to a 30-year-old shortstop who, listen, Bogarts was a good player in Boston. I'm not saying he wasn't. But again, a questionable defender at shortstop. You knew he was going to play second base at some point, and he was 30 years old when you gave the deal out. And I mean, we're not talking about an offensive superstar, a very good player, a couple of really good years. He finished one season top 5 MVP. That was really his only elite season. 11 years for a 30-year-old shortstop. That's not even your guy. That's crazy. The years locking yourself into that contract. The AAV isn't bad, but locking yourself into an 11-year contract for me is why I have this one so high on my list.
Yeah, I had Bogarts on my list too. I didn't know where he was going to fall in this draft. I'm glad you jumped on him though, because it really is a terrible contract. The only thing for me was he still is better than some of the other players on this list. But last year he was not good in 2024, where he played 111 games. He hit 11 home runs, had an OPS of 688. I just think that this is a deal. When you see 2034, it's frightening, as the year he's finally, or the Padres are finally off the hook with this. But with all the financial issues that San Diego has right now, after their owner dies, and now it's left to the kids, and the kids are trying to figure out how to split the money and how to spend the money. And now you have this $25 million every year till 2034. Guys like Tanner Scott are walking out the door to your rival. It's just a total mess. But Bogarts, I think, right now is 2025. 9 years left on this deal, including this season. I could see in 3 or 4, he is not even playing every day for San Diego. And they still have another 5 years left on this deal.
He's certainly not playing shortstop. He's not playing shortstop.
That was one of my least favorite parts of this contract, was you knew you had to move Tatis from shortstop. And Tatis, another guy, not a Gold Glover, but he was your franchise player. You already have it at that position. So unless the guy that you're getting is like a Mookie Betts type of player or a Soto type of player, then you can justify moving key pieces around. But when you have so many shortstops on your roster already, including Machado, a guy who can play shortstop at a high level, and you have to shuffle it around, Bogarts was just not the guy. And we understand the context. They were desperate. They were trying to win it all. They tried to just get every good player they could.
There were a lot of deals that year, too, that offseason. Remember, the Phillies went out. They signed another player that's going to be on this list, I think. Yep. The Mets had said, screw it. We're going to go out there and we're going to re-sign Nimmo because nobody else cares about the luxury tax, so we're going to just go spend. There was a lot of spending that offseason, especially from a lot of National League teams.
All right, I'm going to go 4th pick here with a guy who doesn't have the worst actual financial contract, but has just done absolutely nothing and turned into one of the worst players in the league. And that's KRIS Bryant, who got a 7 for 182. It's up in 2028, 28 million in 2025. He's 33 years old. He simply is one of the worst players in all of Major League Baseball. And we spoke about it last year a lot. We've talked about it this offseason. I don't know how we got to that point, but the Rockies stink. They wouldn't be better with MVP KRIS Bryant. They wouldn't be a playoff team, but they are on the hook for this money, and they don't spend much. When you get a hitter who can't get better at Coors Field, you signed a really bad contract.
Yeah, it's terrible. A Hall of Fame tract. We have talked about this at length. A guy that was going to the Hall of Fame. It's really, I don't feel bad for him, but I do, because of the level of player he was and the status he had around the league, to now just be this running joke, basically. Like, yeah, you got paid. Okay, he's fine. His family's fine. But just your baseball life. How depressing is that, to be one of the worst players on an irrelevant organization?
Yeah, and in that division, nonetheless, every other team's competing for a World Series.
You saw what it was like to win in that division as well. You were on the Giants for that half of season when they actually beat the Dodgers out of the division, lost them in the postseason, but beat them for the division. What a sad baseball life for KRIS Bryant.
Yeah, and I do think the saving grace for Bryant is that Chicago championship, being the best player on that team, he's always welcome back as a legend. He might be, like a retired number, Ring of Honor, whatever they do, member once it's all said and done, because he was that great and ended a century-plus long drought in Chicago. They love him there, and it's just a shame to see how his career went because, once again, opposite of Rendon, I don't think Bryant hates baseball. I don't think Bryant wants to stink. Rendon's been kind of open about his off-the-field issues when it comes to playing baseball. But Bryant, I think, wants to be good, and he just fell off a cliff when he was supposed to be entering his prime.
Yeah, it's sad. Sad. Yep. All right, my third pick, the fifth pick of the draft. I am going to take a guy that is near and dear to my heart. I'm going to take Jacob DeGrom. 5 years, 185. At the time, it was incredibly reckless. He was 35. He was going to be 35 years old. He had nothing but injury issues with the Mets. Yes, when healthy, was the best pitcher in baseball, but the injury issues were insane. You had the Mets coming in at 3 years. I don't really think any other team would have went more than 4 years with him. They give him the extra 5 years, and at $37, $38 million a year. So you weren't even saving yourself with the AAV. It was still around the AAV he would have gotten with anybody else on a shorter term deal. They just went full aggressive mode with Jacob DeGrom at 5 years, 185. He had Tommy John already with them. He's coming back now, and I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting hard for him, but it's a bad contract. It's a bad deal.
And you look back through the years of the 2 years now in his third season that the Rangers have had, and imagine being told during that free agency, you're going to sign Jacob DeGrom, you're going to win a World Series in the first year, and 3 years from now, we're going to have a conversation about Jacob DeGrom being the worst contract maybe your franchise has ever given out. And it's true. He just hasn't done anything with them. It stinks. Once again, similar to Strasburg, a guy that just was never able to consistently stay on the field. He even had issues with that, of course, as a Met. And the Mets decided to let him walk. It's obviously, I don't even think let him walk. They would have taken him back if the money wasn't so egregious from Texas.
The Mets offer was low.
Yeah.
Let's just say that. The Mets were not that interested in retaining him.
But if he had signed with them, I think they would have been pleased. They would have been happy about it for that contract. But the money got so egregious, and it was always going to from somebody. And Texas is the team that forks it up. Fortunately for Texas, they did win the World Series while he was out for the season. So you can always justify this window of time with your fan base, and they won't be upset about it. All right. I'm thinking about my pick here. This is the sixth pick of the draft.
Sixth pick.
And there's some names here that I want to go with, but I don't know who yet. I got a couple massive contracts, but I think I just have to secure Javi Baez right now.
Okay.
With this pick, because again, just a guy who did not work out for a team, and maybe similar to Bogaerts, I think Baez was very overrated as a player when he got signed, when he was traded to the Mets, and he got a lot of hype for his highlight reel and the flashiness that he had and the spark that he had. But this is a 6 for 140, and it's up in 2027. The Tigers don't spend any money, so to be on the hook $25 million for a guy who you're trying to put in center field now, a middle infielder, because you just can't find a place to play him. You can't justify having him in your lineup. Now that you're actually contending, he's 32 years old. Javi Baez, an easy, bad contract for me. It's not crippling the Tigers as we see right now, but it just is something that they would obviously love to have off their books.
$25 million a year for a team that, really, they couldn't go the extra mile for a guy like Bregman. If they don't have this deal on the books, Bregman's probably a Detroit Tiger. So 100%, it's a good one. That one had actually slipped my mind, to be completely honest with you. So that's a nice one.
That one's starting to fall out of the popular.
Yeah. Well, there's so many big deals. So many big deals.
Yep. All right. Now you got some big deals. I think we're up to a big deal portion of this episode, where everything is pretty big, AAV or total contract.
Yeah, so this is my fourth pick, the seventh pick of the draft. I'm going to take Trey Turner, 11 years, $300 million. Turner's still a good player. I think he'll still be a good player for a couple of more years here. But last season finished the year not so great in the second half. His total numbers, 21 homers, 62 RBIs. He only stole 19 bags, 121 games. Yes, he did miss some time, but the OPS dropped. It was in the 900s. It dropped to 800. Listen, when you have a guy that relies on his speed and he's not a great defensive player and you give him an 11-year contract at age 30, I have a big time problem with that. You know, a lot of these GMs nowadays want to stay away from giving long-term contracts to guys on the wrong side of 30, and he just happened to be on the wrong side of 30. And it was an aggressive move. And I think we've talked about this deal for the past 3 live burrows now, just how we don't think this is going to age well and how he's not going to age well. We're also talking about a guy that's had injury history in his career. 11 years, $300 million. It was shocking at the time, and this is not going to end well for the Phillies.
Yeah, this contract always was an overpay. It was the Phillies getting desperate. I don't need to go through my whole Batman Robin speech with Bryce Harper again, as I've done it every week for the last 3 weeks. But this is one that we did get some hate for a few weeks ago when we first brought it up. And I stand by you here. This is a bad contract for the Phillies. It's only going to continue to age poorly. They need to figure out a way to, correct this. You said it perfectly yesterday. They get a mulligan if they can get Kyle Tucker this offseason. So it's something that the Phillies have to try and get a ring with. They can get a ring with it, but 11 for 300 up in 2034. That's a terrible contract for a guy who's about to be 32 years old. Really bad. I'm going to go with a big deal here. I think biggest on the list so far that we've had is a 12 for $426 million up in 2030. Mike Trout, I hate to say it, but he's played 100 games once in the last 6 seasons since 2019, and it's just getting really tough to look at it as a good contract for the Angels. When he's on the field, he is Mike Trout. It's not like he stinks when he plays, but he just never does. And the Angels would love right now with Rendon and Trout, you have 78 million, 77 million roughly on the books there. And you would just love, you throw in Yusei Kikuchi, who I didn't even include on my list, but still just for this year, that's about almost 100 million that might be 100 million that the Angels are spending on Trout, Rendon, and Kikuchi. So you wish you had some better money to spend, and Trout, it just hasn't worked out. He had to get the contract. They couldn't lose him. He was their most prolific player in franchise history. He was on track to being one of the greatest players ever. Health hasn't held up since he got the deal, though, and he's 33 years old now. It ends when he's about 40 years old. Bad contract.
It feels dirty because he is, he's one of the greatest players I think we've ever seen. I think we're getting to a point where that's not going to be the case, where we could say he's the greatest, but that's discussion for another day. But it feels dirty, but it's 100% true. He has to be on the list, and I can't disagree with you.
Yeah, we're at a point now where it's going to be some good players, though. I think it's good players that are getting pretty massive contracts.
Now I'm like, now I don't know where to go. I don't know if I roll. This is my last pick.
No, you have 2 left.
2 left.
This is pick 9 of the draft. Pick 9.
Okay. All right, let's go with Machado. Machado's a Hall of Fame player. Okay, and there's a couple of reasons why I don't like this deal. He has been durable. He has been durable for this team. He missed some time in 2023. But nothing serious. He's played a lot of games. I think he goes into the Hall of Fame if his career ended today as a Oriole. No, he would probably still go in as a Padre right now. He has bigger moments with the Padres. Either way, he's a Hall of Fame player. He's going to the Hall of Fame. But 11 years, $350 million. They didn't even let him test the market. They gave him that contract before free agency started. And listen, maybe he got a deal similar to that. He was the number 2 guy behind Ohtani that year in free agency if he would have hit it. So maybe he gets a deal similar to that, but I still think they would have the upper hand in signing him. Listen, he's an older guy that's going to start to decline, and at close to $35 million a year for a guy in his late 30s, that's going to be tough. So he's still producing. He's still a good player. He can still pick it at third, but I'm not a fan of the deal.
What year is this up? 2034?
2033.
Yeah, it's bad. And when he got that extension, You're right, because you're right. He didn't even let him hit the market, so his contract technically wasn't even up. I was shocked.
Remember he had the opt out, so he was gonna opt out.
He was going to opt out. I was floored when he got this amount of money.
Yeah,
I thought this was a 6 or 7 year deal, and you'd probably maybe get around $200 million. And for him to get this much money, he just took the Padres. He used all of his leverage. He knew that they were in too deep financially with their commitments to let him walk also.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew they were losing Soto after that was that offseason, right? So it was last offseason. So they knew they were going to lose Soto, and they couldn't lose Machado as well for nothing. And this contract was egregious. Awful. Really bad. I actually didn't have it on my list, so good call with Machado there. All right. I have 2 picks left. I think we're both making out pretty well here. I'm going to go with a Yankee. And I have 2 Yankees on my list, so I'm deciding which one because they are my 2 worst contracts.
Really? Who's the other Yankee? I know the other one. I know one of them. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Stanton.
I see he wasn't on my list.
I'm going to go with Stanton over Rodon because Stanton, he's just so broken down at this point that I feel like the Yankees, who obviously are operating with a very high budget, but a budget nonetheless, $32 million for a guy who plays 90 regular season games a year now, can't play the field, can't run the bases, and can't hit 250 in the regular season. OPS and on base are lower than you'd like for him. And obviously we have the playoff contributions, but I don't think it's enough for $32 million a year through 2029. That's a lot of money in a lot of years for a guy who's 35 years old and already can't move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just like in totality, of course, it's terrible. It didn't end up working out for them. They didn't get a championship. The players they missed out on because they had him on the team. Yeah, like all of it. It's bad. But I don't know. I think currently, like going forward, I think the Rodon deal is worse. I think the Rodon deal hinders them more than anything else.
The only reason I go Stanton over Rodon is at least Rodon pitches. Stanton, I know it's not just like a recency thing. He doesn't play that many games. No. Yeah, and I wish he could give you some defensive value. He gives you absolutely not, even if it's negative defensive WAR, but he plays at the outfield. He doesn't at all. So it's just, I really hate the Stanton deal. I think it completely hinders them from adding really good position players every offseason because they have to look at their books and say, well, we have a $30 million hitter already who, when he does hit, is productive, but he doesn't get the job done enough. It's no good for me.
All right.
Your last pick.
My final pick. I don't know if this is going to come as a shock to you. I've always thought this guy was a little overrated. I was shocked when he got this deal from this team. Dansby Swanson, 7 years, $177 million. The WAR numbers are always a little higher because he is a good defensive shortstop, but $177 million for a player that has a career OPS of 734 is mind-boggling. Since he's gotten to the Cubs, he has a 724 OPS. He has a 9.3 WAR in 2 years. Listen, this is not what you want in a $170 million player. I can find a good defensive shortstop for cheaper. That's basically what you're getting with an average output at the plate. I can't live with that. I cannot live with that at $177 million for 7 years. You want to talk about a team that doesn't want to spend money but has it. You don't think this deal hinders them from possibly re-signing Kyle Tucker or making other moves?
Yeah, I had Swanson on my list. I don't know if I was going to pick him with the last pick, but Swanson is a great candidate for this. This contract is bad. You are getting such average production at shortstop for this contract, and it just feels like stuff that you can get from one-year guys in certain cases, stuff that you can get from players on lower terms, stuff that you can develop. This is a player that I do think you should be able to develop on your own. I mean, you look at them getting rid of guys like Cam Smith to make moves for Kyle Tucker, and maybe if you didn't have Dansby Swanson, the entire roster looks different and better. It might be far improved, this roster. So the Dansby Swanson money is definitely no good. Last pick for me, it's a tough tough one, but then we'll do our honorable mentions. There's just 2 guys on this list that I don't want to leave out of the 12 worst contracts in baseball, and it's Carlos Rodon or Trevor Story. I don't like either contract. I think the Red Sox are in a bad spot with the Story contract, especially when it comes to these prospects. Both of these contracts are the same length now. They don't get out until 2028. It's tough, but I'm gonna go with Rodon because he is just one of the worst pitchers that actually has a non-arbitration deal right now. He's one of the worst pitchers that are on their second contract in the league, and it's not any second contract. It's 6 for 162. So Yankee fans, you want to do the math on him and Stanton and how much they're occupying. At least Stanton plays, but Stanton and Rodon occupy a lot of the Yankees' payroll, and it negatively affects their team. And I think Brian Cashman's given out some bad contracts. I think the Trevor Story contract is equally as bad, to be honest, for the Red Sox, but I think that they could work around it more than the Yankees. Rodon has to pitch for the Yankees. Yeah. Story is going to get to a point in a year with the prospects the Red Sox have where he actually doesn't have to play. You can just sit him and make him a bench bat every third day. You can move him around, do whatever you want with him. There's flexibility with Story that I don't think there is with Rodon.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, I didn't like the deal at the time, and that first season was awful. It felt ultra aggressive from Brian Cashman, who, recently hasn't been like that. He's been, savvy and smart with his moves, gotten aggressive when he's had to. But yeah, it kills them. That deal absolutely kills them. And I mean, even just yesterday, this is early in the season, but he takes you. I texted you, I'm like, it's funny. He can look so dominant and then yet have an inning like he does, and he completely takes you out of a game.
Yep. It's the same thing as the Kansas City game. It's so many of his starts. The Kansas City game in the division round of the playoffs last year, he has that first inning where he strikes out the side, and he's getting pumped. He's jacked. And then he has one bad inning. He ends up pitching 4, but it took the Yankees out of the game. Yeah. And he'll give you 3 shutout innings with no hits, no walks, no runs. And he'll give you 1 inning where he walks 3, gives up a single and a home run, and all of a sudden you're playing from behind the rest of the day.
Yeah, incredible.
Do you have any honorable mentions that were not listed?
I had a couple. I did want to get Story on there. Story's a great call. I did have Rodon listed as well. There's 3 of them. 2 would be considered very hot takes, and I'm gonna throw those out there. Rafael Devers at 10 years, $313 million. And Vlad Jr. at 14 years, 500, even though it's not official yet.
I was wondering if we were going to mention that one today.
I wanted to put it on so badly, and I decided not to. But that deal does have Kevin, he's an inconsistent player. Like, we have to call it as it is. He has seasons. He's had seasons, a couple of them, where he is not one of the 5 best first basemen in all of baseball offensively. And he's not a good defender. You're paying for one tool. I know a lot of people made fun of the Mets for paying for one tool with Juan Soto, but like, you're legitimately paying for one tool. The guy can't move. He's a bad defender.
He's analytically, he's the worst base runner in the league too.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
So he, at least in 2024, he was. So it's really bad. That's a really bad contract. They had to do it. We spoke about it a lot on Monday's show, so you can check that out. I have 2 honorable mentions that we didn't name. Carlos Correa, who's still producing for the Twins, but I hate the contract. Not up till 2029. It's a 6 for $200 million. They're on the hook for $37 million a year on this deal. That is a disaster for Minnesota. And also Christian Yelich, 7 for $188. The way that that's aging in Milwaukee is awful. That's not up till 2030. He's already 33 years old, and it's $24 million a year, once again, for a team that pinches their pennies. So I don't like either of those contracts either. I
was between Correa, Story, and Swanson for the last pick, and Swanson's just the worst player out of all of them, is why I went with them. And it's like the biggest. He's not worse than Story, but he's worse than Correa, and it's a bigger deal than what Story has.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of bad contracts in this league. If there's one thing we've learned today. So that's a wrap.
And your team's given a couple of them out, and mine has 2, and mine has a couple of them in the past. So
2 that made the list today are my team, and I do think
Did you
Stanton
consider
deal is
Soto?
that big.
Did you consider Soto?
No, I thought about it for a second because it is, as we mentioned earlier in the offseason, it is a financially irresponsible contract.
Yeah.
But when you have an owner that can afford it and is willing to deal with it and still build out the roster, it's fine. And I have to see how that one ages first. You know, we might be sitting here doing one of these episodes in 5 years saying this Soto contract's aging terribly. We might be no longer saying that about Vlad. We don't know how they're going to go. A lot of it's projection. But I think we did a good job today on picking contracts that have actually began to age horribly and are looking bad. I mean, Trey Turner, we can see the regression. Bogarts, you can definitely see the regression. That's the reason I didn't put Correa, because he still hit 300 last year. He's still a good postseason performer. They just don't get there. He's still a good player. I don't know when he stops being a good player, but I don't like that contract anyways.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. Good episode. Bad Contracts, episode 43. Next week, we will have a draft under 25 players. Players under age 25 are drafting them, building out the 2 best teams, and we will see, based on who you vote for, who you think won. So thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one where we talk some regular Yankees, Mets, all around the league, and everywhere in between.